Hi guys, if you're new here, my name is Sam and I make videos about makeup, chronic illness, and whatever I want. Today, I'm revisiting Natasha Denona. I tried it, was it last year or the year before? Time is a blur. I bought 4 palettes, which is excessive, I know, but I was very interested in the brand. The color stories really spoke to me, and it was a major flop. I did a video explaining like all my issues with it, and for the most part I still stand behind everything I said in that video. But with all the hype and how many people say this brand is their absolute favorite, I needed to try it again, but I did it differently this time. So rather than paying full price, which these palettes are not worth full price, I bought the 2 palettes I liked the most second hand, which some people don't like that. I think I mentioned it in other videos. Powders are very easy to sanitize, and I sanitize them very well. So I have been testing this one out for actually a year. I got this last year, right around this time. It's, by me, has been very well used. And then I recently purchased this one. I've also been using this a lot. I really wanted to use every shade more than once to gather my feelings on it. So let me start with the bad. Let's get the bad out of the way. I think Natasha Denona is a horrifically overpriced brand, period. These things, I believe, are $69, and I mean, they're pretty, but the quality doesn't stay $69 to me. I have palettes from all sorts of brands, from Wet n Wild, drugstore, ColourPop, a little higher than drugstore, mid-tier, like Urban Decay. I have indie shadows, I have high-end Pat McGrath, Tom Ford. I have literally everything, and I cannot say that these are worth the price tag, because I've tried eyeshadow from $10 to almost $200, and these don't fall in where other things around this price would. Like, the closest thing I have that is the exact same price, I think maybe it's $1 more, is Patrick Ta. And there has been an issue with like wax blooms and stuff in Patrick Ta shimmers, but the quality is 1000% better than Natasha Denona. I'm wearing Natasha Denona today, and I'm not unhappy with this look, but it doesn't look like $69. And let me take it off and like zoom you in. So I have to look because I can't see myself in the monitor. It's pretty, right? But I guess you can't even really tell because I put a lot of work into blending it out. But these shadows are very similar to Urban Decay in the sense of they're not overly pigmented. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but like this darker red, when you finally get it to blend, it blends beautifully. And I'm also just kind of known for blending, but you can see my veins through it here. Can you on this side? Maybe not so much. But you have to build it up a lot. I mean, a lot. I'm going to zoom myself back out. I'll just let you see the makeup as I'm talking, so I'll leave those off. I understand this brand is probably for someone who doesn't want extreme makeup looks. Like, this is probably more extreme than the average person wants to go. So you would be more drawn to probably a color story like this, where almost all of it, the deepest it goes is mid-tone. Where when you get into this kind of color story, it goes deep quickly. Lost my train of thought. This would be great for like medium and deeper complexions for like an everyday tone, but for my skin tone or lighter, it's probably a bit extreme. And everything is beginner friendly, which is great. Like I said, they're not too opaque, so you really have to build them up so you're not going to accidentally put too much on, which if you're new to makeup or just not very experienced in different formulas, like, you can ruin a look by it being too concentrated. So with that, I'm not going to be too judgy on the fact you have to build it up. My main complaint is I don't understand why, and it's consistent with the other palettes that I tried as well as these two. The other ones I tried were Retro, the gold palette, and then I got like a mini palette that didn't have a deep color in it, but the consistency of the deep colors is very, very patchy until it isn't. But if you don't know how to work with it, you don't really know how to build it up and how to work with it. Like Natasha Denona absolutely does not work with natural hair brushes. If you don't know all these things, to try synthetic, to try X, Y, and Z, you're just going to think it's a dud shadow. And like those were my first impressions and second, third, and fourth impressions last time I tested this is that they're duds. And I still half stand behind that because I don't feel like you should have to work that hard to get it to look like this. This look with another palette would have taken me maybe about 5 minutes. This took me 15 because I had to just keep blending and blending, and then the dark shade would blend away and I'd have to put it back, and then eventually it built up and stopped being patchy. But you shouldn't have to work this hard when you're paying $69 for an eyeshadow palette. My other con is the amount of repeat shades, or like close enough shades. Like, in my opinion, these don't need to be here. Like, these don't need to be the same. You see very similar shimmers here. Like, all of these don't need to be here. Let's take a peek at the Glam palette. You know, some of these, like, those are really close. Some of, like, these two shimmers, these two, you just have a lot of too similar. I wasn't even in frame for that because I can't see. So these two are very similar. These two are very similar. We have things that are very, very similar shimmer-wise, which once you get them on the eye, they look identical, so there's no need for it. I'll give you a little bit of a pass on similar mattes because with a gradient, they do blend better. Like, these two will definitely blend nicely together, but you can see a difference. On my eyes today, you can definitely see the difference between these two and these two, which I have blended up and out. But when I'm paying $69, I don't want 3 shimmers that will look identical once they're on my eye. So that is another major complaint here. Now for some pros, I'm putting my glasses back on because I can't stand not being able to see myself. For some pros here, like, I think they are pretty palettes. Like, the looks that I have done with this Glam palette, I definitely prefer the Glam palette to the bronze, mostly because I have other palettes that look like the bronze that just kind of behave better. They need less work. I still love this and it's still beautiful, but out of the two, I would say that Glam is my absolute favorite. Every look I've come up with this is gorgeous. I don't own anything else that looks like this. Maybe a couple shades in like a original like Naked or Naked 2 by Urban Decay, but I'm very happy with that. But I stand behind that. It's a little difficult to work with, especially if you want to deepen it up. I think the dark brown and the Glam is easier to work with than the dark red and the dark brown and the bronze, and that's where I'm going to circle back around to another con. Is the inconsistency with this brand is mind-boggling to me. It seems like some people will get a palette and it's perfect, some people will get a palette and it's okay, and some people will get the same palette and it's terrible. It's not consistent at retailers. It's not like it's better quality from her website than it is at Sephora. I'm not seeing any kind of trend. It seems like batch to batch is inconsistent, which is just unacceptable for the price tag you're paying. Completely unacceptable. The other thing is the brand is just kind of weird. They've been leaking their own products and then turning in, those pages that share like makeup release pages, brain fart, reporting them for like stealing content and getting their stuff taken down when they're the ones who released it. And it's like to try to build this false hype, which I don't understand. I really also don't understand how people say this is like their favorite brand when they have such large collections. Sometimes quite often, larger than mine, and they're saying this is like their second favorite brand. It's very confusing to me because I don't understand it. I understand the palettes look beautiful and in some cases perform pretty well. I don't know the difference in these. Why does one perform significantly better than the other? I just don't understand. It's very confusing to me. And I still hold a lot of the same sentiments that I do in the last video, is that I'm not convinced that, like, it isn't just sometimes mildly exaggerated or maybe dishonest reviews for whatever reason. I don't know, because not everyone who loves the brand gets PR, so it's not that. And I don't think people who get PR are dishonest. Like, I see tons of people being very honest about things. There's just something about this brand that kind of has a chokehold on the beauty community, and I just am kind of confused because it isn't cheap. Moving on to some pros here. If these palettes were cheaper, I would say they're definitely worth it. If these were like $48, I would recommend the brand regularly. I know she does sales all the time and maybe they get that cheap. I don't know. I haven't really looked. But they are good. They're not bad. They're just not worth $69 in any capacity. Even this one I love, I would not pay $69 for. I think the most I would pay is maybe $55. I would not pay almost $70 for this. The other pro is they're all magnetic, so you can really just create custom palettes. I see people do that all the time, especially people who have all of her palettes just creating their own color stories. That's at least something I recently got into with some of my ColourPop palettes that I didn't like the original layout. If I continue to get Natasha Denona, that's possibly something I would try out. I will say, as for bronze, it looks so much prettier than Naked Heat, but I think Naked Heat performs better. Now, I'm not wearing glitter glue today because I wanted a more subtle look for this video. The shimmers in Natasha Denona are better than Urban Decay. So, like, the mattes in the Naked Heat are better, in my opinion, but the shimmers in here are better. Another pro is when you get it to work, it does look fantastic. Like I showed you, this eye look looks great. And the blend looks like it should have been effortless. It wasn't, but it looks like it. So if you are willing to put in a little more time, there is that. Overall, how am I feeling about the brand compared to the last video? I was 100% anti Natasha Denona and thought it was a scam in my last video, if I recall. I haven't watched it since I edited it, but I'm pretty positive that was my stance. Where I stand now is it's a good, fine brand. It's good. It's fine. You get decent product. It's overpriced and inconsistent. It reminds me a little bit of Melt in the inconsistency phase. Like, Melt has been for years a favorite brand of mine, but now they're kind of just disappearing from my radar altogether and kind of not even standing out in my collection because their formula is so inconsistent. Natasha Denona gives me Melt vibes in that regard. I wouldn't say Melt is overpriced because they are an indie brand, and I think Natasha Denona is considered an indie brand, but I literally know nothing about it. I've tried to find stuff online and I can't really find much. It seems to be a brand that sort of appeared out of nowhere, which is strange, but there is that. Do I recommend Natasha Denona? I feel like if there's a palette you absolutely love that isn't like anything you own, I'm thinking like the Yucca palette is something that like a lot of people don't own, so like that could be one, but do not pay full price. Wait for a sale. Whether it's a Sephora sale, an Ulta sale, or a sale from Natasha Denona, the company, don't pay full price because none of these are worth $69. I have other brands, like, let's take a Pat McGrath. Is that worth $128? In my opinion, yeah, if it's going to be a palette that you use regularly, 100%. Patrick Ta, is it worth $70? In my opinion, it is, because the looks just put themselves together. The products work so easily you barely have to do anything, which to me is worth money, especially for everyday makeup, which for me, this is an everyday makeup. These two palettes are everyday makeup. My higher end stuff, a Tom Ford, a Pat McGrath, or a Patrick Ta, is everyday makeup. I don't want to have to spend 15 minutes on my eyes when I'm just trying to get ready for the day. Those are looks I like to sit down with intention for, and I feel like for them looking like everyday makeup, the Natasha Denona palette is not either of them, because I have to spend so much time. So I don't reach for them for every day because they're not effortless enough. So those are my thoughts about Natasha Denona. One last question could be, do I plan to buy anything from the company in the future? And the answer is probably. If there's something that speaks to me enough that I don't have anything like, again, the Glam palette is definitely my cool tone nude summary, but if somehow there's something that is missing from my collection that Natasha Denona comes out with, and there's a good enough sale, I wouldn't rule it out. It's not on my radar. It will never be a top favorite brand for me, but there are definitely things I like enough about it to either buy it secondhand again, find it on a sale, that kind of stuff. But I have such a large collection, I don't know that she's going to create anything that's missing to where it would add much. Like, this one didn't really add much to my collection. It was more just, I really loved the look of it. With the Glam palette, definitely filled in a missing piece of my collection. I don't see the brand creating anything like that for me in the future. What are your thoughts about Natasha Denona? Are you kind of in the same boat? Or are you someone who has literally every palette? I have a couple friends who have every palette. They very much love the brand, and I'm glad that they do. I'm glad that they think it was worth the money. It's just not really it for me. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing, and I will see you guys next time.